Hey Trauma Blockers, it's your girl RDB Speaks. That's right, your host of Triumph with Reverend Dr. Xenia Barnes. And today we're here for episode 2 with Phillip Woolfolk. Phillip dropped some gems in his last episode, so I cannot wait to see the gems and hear the gems that he will be dropping today. Phillip, welcome back.
Depreciating assets. You're not buying anything that's going to grow in value. And if you lease a car for 3 to 4 years, you have to think about the fact that at the end of that 3 to 4 years, you still need a car. So you have to go out and lease another one. Now, in contrast, what I've done over the years is I bought one new car. And my thinking around that was, I want a car that'll last me at least 10 years. I want a car that I can finance over 5 years, but pay for in 3, right? So my thinking was, then I'll pay for that vehicle at the end of 3 years. I'll then have 7 more years without a car payment, right? So that was my thinking. I was also already a real estate investor by the time I purchased that vehicle. And my car payment was about $432 a month. So for me, that was 2 rental properties at a roughly $250 each. So my car payment was being paid by proceeds from rental income. I paid for the car in 3 years, started off with my idea of 7 years without a car payment. Over that 7-year period of time, I saved and invested $432 a month because I was used to making that car payment. So I continued to save that. Mm-hmm. My thinking was, at some point, this car is going to go kaput. I'm going to need another car, and I'm not financing the next one, right? So that was my thinking. So I bought that car. It was a 1988. I bought it in 1987 when the 88s came out, and I ended up with that car from 1988 until 2006. So instead of 10 years, I had that vehicle for almost 20. And so every car I've purchased since then, I've paid cash for, and I've bought it used. So I haven't purchased another new car. So the money that people spend over a 20-year period of time, if you're leasing vehicles, you've leased at least 6, right? And at the end of that 20-year period of time, you still have no equity. You don't even have a car that you own because you've been leasing, right? So if you've had that same philosophy of buying upscale cars beyond what you really could afford, and to me, affordability is not what you can actually afford to buy a car in terms of your monthly payment. To me, affordability is, have you invested in other assets to improve your wealth position? Mm-hmm. Have you built some equity in other assets so that whatever you're paying for car payment wise is not necessarily coming out of your paycheck? And so if you have that kind of philosophy and that kind of thinking, and you couple that with, okay, I have a job in one hand, and the other hand, I have a part-time business, and that part-time business allows me to earn additional income that I don't need to live on. And so if you have additional income that you don't need to live on, that positions you to then be able to invest and do other things to grow your wealth base. Mm-hmm. And so I used to get teased when I was younger about the fact that I would work my 9-to-5 job. Mm-hmm. I'd have usually a duffel bag in the trunk of my car and some tools. I'd go to wherever it is I was working, put on my jeans and work boots and pull out my tools, and I'd work sometimes to 11, 12 o'clock, right? So I would say to people, I don't work for money, I work for freedom. Mm-hmm. And that didn't resonate with people until they found out at 43 I was home. And then it dawned on folks that this 20 years that he did this full-time job, part-time business thing, has now positioned him to the point where he can actually spend 5 years at home with his kids and his
Mm-hmm.
wife, right? And so I think that you're able to do more when you're able to develop that mindset of sacrifice, of work, and investing in things that make sense, and not investing in things that don't make sense, right? We don't really need, another thing Dr. George Fraser says is that he'd rather have a plastic bag or something of this nature. I'm paraphrasing. A plastic bag with $5,000 in it than a $5,000 handbag with no money in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times, we have this appearance of wealth,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't actually have true wealth. We haven't established any wealth bases. We haven't accumulated any assets that are growing in value. But we have lots of jewelry, lots of clothing, lots of, all the name brand stuff. And a lot of those companies that we invest in material things with have a disdain for our community. They don't invest in our Black colleges and universities. They don't invest in our communities. Some of them you'd be hard pressed to get $100 for Little League in the neighborhood.
Or even just a donation. And
Right.
so I'm happy you brought that up, right? Because that pivots us into the next section of questions I wanted to ask you. But I wanted us to really highlight the point that as individuals, we have to not allow society to dictate what success looks like to
Right.
us
Right.
in order for us to really begin to build wealth and understand what generational wealth is, because we spend so much time trying to look the part that we
Right.
don't realize if we start saving that money and making that money work for us, we'll really begin to get to emerge from this pit of living paycheck to paycheck. The
Right.
reason why we live paycheck to paycheck now is because we spend so much of our paycheck trying to keep up with the Joneses
Right.
that we end up in more debt and we end up doing ourselves more harm.
Absolutely.
And so as we pivot into what it's like right now and fighting in corporate America style, in this day and age of 2025, and understanding that we're entering this in this space where it's so hostile, and DEI has been rolled back. They're trying to roll back, or attempting to roll back, so many civil rights and Black advancement. You spoke a little bit earlier about the 300,000 African American women who have lost their job. How do we fight corporate style when the system is actively trying to erase us? What strategies would you say will be beneficial for us to use?
Well, I got to tell you, from a strategic standpoint, when it comes to economics, where you spend your dollars is a vote for that organization, that manufacturing, that apparatus, that distribution channel or system that allows them to amass wealth, and that allows them to amass wealth with our dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go back in history and you look at the Montgomery bus boycott, for example, there was this long period of time that our community basically walked and carpooled and basically refused to ride the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about just the idea of people doing the right thing because it's the right thing and it's the moral thing to do, that has typically not happened. Most times things have changed around some window of economics in terms of how we're viewed, right? And so if you think about it, the Montgomery bus boycott was successful because economically the companies that were owned the buses could no longer go without riders paying fee. And so that changed because economically they were beaten.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in terms of how we spend our dollars, is, there are things that you need that are necessities, and that there are things that you do not need. If you look at some of the statistics on what we spend our money on, one of the big things we spend our money on are things like salty snacks and soft drinks, right? Those are not necessities. Those are things that are not good for us health wise to begin with, and they're not necessities. So what would happen economically if you took all the dollars that you spend on salty snacks, soft drinks, sodas, all the other colored drinks that are, got all the dyes and all the stuff in it that your body doesn't need, and you have all these additives that are not acceptable in other countries around the world. The ingredients that are in a lot of the things that we consume are banned in other countries. They can't even sell the junk that we consume and the stuff that we eat in many other countries around the world. And some countries around the world won't accept our beef and our chicken and other meat products because of all the additives. And so there are things that we can do economically that put us in a better place. And part of it is this idea of where are we spending our money? How are those organizations? What is their relationship with our community? And the things that we're buying, is it something we need, or is it something that we've become accustomed to and we just buy it because it's something that we like? And so we just have to become more disciplined about what we do with the resources that we have.
Agree. Thanks for sharing that. And so I could not have you here and not talk about all the things that you have going on and the things that you do to put this practice into theory. And so, Phillip, you're not just writing about economic power. You're literally in the lending business, helping people access capital. That's boots on the ground. Like when we think boots on the ground, that's boots on the ground. What are the most common barriers you see Black business owners facing when they're trying to get funding? And what are the myths we need to bust about Black businesses and credit worthiness?
Well, some of it is related to just, barriers that we've faced, and some of it is related to our lack of understanding and knowledge about credit and about finance and all those different things. You have a lot of folks who, I'll give you an example. I've worked with lots of people over the years in terms of working with low and moderate income folks to help them become homeowners. One of the things that we came across significantly during those days were people who came out of college and they already had jacked up credit, and one of the reasons was because, you have a college student who's basically a poor student going to school full time, not much in terms of residual income. If they worked a part-time job, it was to help them put food on the table or whatever incidentals they needed to get through school. And yet the financial industry would send them a credit card with a $5,000 line of credit or something. And so you have a student that has no resources, and all of a sudden they have $5,000 worth of credit available to them. So they go out and start using it. So they graduate from college in credit card debt. They graduate from college in student loan debt. And they typically start with a job that doesn't pay enough for them to get out of that debt quickly. And you have people who have student loans, they turn into mortgages. They still have them 10, 15 years after they graduate from college. And so that's one of the barriers that people face. So then they go out and start a business. They start a business out of their pockets because they can't get financing, can't get the funding that they might need to either start a business, grow a business, or expand the business. And so they're kind of behind the eight ball. And so, and so that's a lot of it. People come and they're kind of fighting from behind to reestablish themselves from a credit standpoint, pay off delinquent debt, and get themselves to a place where they're considered credit worthy from a traditional sense. And so you have those kinds of issues and barriers that our people face, and then you have sometimes predatory type of situations that go on where people gain access to dollars through either credit cards, cash advances, or those kinds of things, and they end up with 25-30% interest rates in terms of credit card debt. And so those are some of the barriers that kind of stand in folks' way, and kind of reduces their ability to expand and grow as rapidly as they might otherwise be able to, because they're unable to get the funding that they might need to position themselves to be able to buy materials and resources at a cheaper rate. If you're manufacturing something and you're able to buy raw materials in bulk as opposed to smaller quantities, you're able to have a better margin in terms of your pricing. So there are lots of different things like that go into it. I spent a number of years in banking, some of those years in residential mortgage lending, some in small business lending, commercial lending, real estate finance, and consumer lending, dealing with issues with credit cards, home equity loans, and those things. So I've developed over the years some understanding of the lending and the borrowing process, and how to be able to position yourself in the best way in order to be able to get the funding that you might need for your business.
That is a great. And so, I'm going to ask for a success story, right? So I want you to tell us about one business you've helped through Main Street Advisory, right? Change the name if you have to. That's definitely okay. But I want our listeners to hear what's possible when Black businesses get the same access to capital that their counterparts get, are often so granted, right? And what happens when the playing field is literally level.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you go back and look at the pandemic, for example, so we had an opportunity to work with a number of businesses really around the state that were struggling because things were shut down. Some of them were able to pivot, and those who were able to pivot and get the funding that they needed to continue to pay their employees, continue to stay open. Many of those businesses were successful, and some of them actually grew during the pandemic because they were able to get the resources that they needed, and they were able to pivot and generate streams of income in other ways that were outside of the box as it related to how they traditionally, did their business. And so there were a number of folks like that kind of come to mind. Some of them were restaurant owners. One person comes to mind who had a business that was really a little bit uncommon, that populated the theaters and the seats for talk show host. And so by being able to access capital, those businesses were able to continue to keep their doors open and continue to flourish. And then the other side is that sometimes there are people who have challenges that are related to just things that happen. So I have a client right now that we're working with, trying to support their ability to get funding for a legacy property that they've owned for a number of years in the family, and they fell behind during the pandemic, and the lender is unwilling to accept partial payments, so they need the lump sum of cash to be able to pay off this mortgage. And because of their credit score, they're unable to get funding through traditional channels. And so we've been able to open up a channel that will allow them to get temporary funding. There'll be an interest-only loan for 12 months. It'll allow them to pay off the mortgage that they have. And then once they pay that off, they'll start seeing their credit score go up. And then they'll be able to go and get traditional dollars probably 7-8 months down the road. So I do some of that kind of work as an alternative lender to work with different mortgage brokers, commercial loan brokers, private lenders, and other funders around the country that are willing to take a risk on those sorts of scenarios.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So this is the brag station, right? This is the brag corner right now. I want you to brag on everything, Phillip. I want you to tell our listeners about any offers you have coming up. Definitely promote your upcoming Triumph in the Trenches Volume 3 book that's coming up. How can they get in touch with you if they want to book you to be a speaker, or if they want to learn more about business loaning and anything else that has to do with financial literacy?
Oh, absolutely. So my website is www.phillipwoolfolk.com. That'll give you access to the Triumph in the Trenches, Navigating Success for Black Professionals. Our first book, volume 2, is also available there. And I have not added volume 3 yet, but volume 3 is coming in during Black History Month of 2026 of next year. The other anthology that I'm working on will be out probably in November. That'll be available on my website as well. And for speaking engagements, I can be reached at the same website. There's a booking portal within that space. And I also do some coaching, and my business coaching I have basically 2 packages that I offer right now. One is a 10-hour package, and one is a 20-hour package, and that's something that's available. Folks can reach out to me through my website and access my email address and contact me for any of those things through that. And then Main Street Advisory is www.mainstreetadvisoryllc.com. That's the website that I do some business consulting and my alternative lending for folks who might be looking, real estate investors, builders, developers, folks looking for working capital financing, equipment financing, can reach me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm also going to be dropping these links for you all, so you'll have access to them. You can see Phillip Woolfolk website as running across the banner. So don't be a stranger. Definitely reach out to him. Now, Phillip, before I let any of my guests go, I ask them this one standard question, and it's coming to your way now. What does it mean to be a trauma blocker? What does that mean to you?
Well, Doc, my tagline is be unstoppable. Mm-hmm. And so for me, being a trauma blocker means really deciding that regardless of what your situation, circumstances are at present, or whatever your situation, circumstances have been in the past, you're not the sum total of your past. You are what you want to be, what you think about, and what you aspire to be as you look forward to your future.
I love it. I'm going to have to add that to the wall. As you know, as the official trauma blocker, it's very important that we continue to collect trauma blockers as we move along. And so, thank you for sharing that. Again, I'm just going to drop these banners so everyone can see your banner to Main Street Advisory LLC, www.com, as well as Phillip Woolfolk. So both of those will be streaming across, so our listeners will know how to get in contact with you. Thank you again for joining Triumph with RDB Speaks. You have been a wonderful host.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, as always, being with you. And I look forward to our next Triumph on the Rooftop.
Absolutely. Coming in 2026, there will definitely be another Triumph on the Rooftop. I'm looking forward to coming and supporting you at your next event. And don't forget, everyone, we're launching Triumph in the Trenches Volume 3, Black History Month 2026. So there are so many things that will be coming your way, and I will definitely be bringing Phillip back for another interview. So stay tuned.
Thank you.